understand that mathematics makes sense. Zach.
Thanks. Let's go. So as I was preparing for this talk, I was listening a lot to this record from Bon Iver. I don't know if you're aware of this. It's a record called 22 a Million. It's a beautiful record. On this record, Justin Vernon sings a lyric that hit me. He says, "The math ahead and the math behind." He had a different interpretation of that lyric than I did, but I took it as a call to action for me to sort of think about the math that's been behind me, where I've been, and then the math ahead of me and where I want to go. So that's the sort of framework for this talk. But to get to the math ahead, we got to go backwards to the math behind, and I'm going to tell you a story. It's my story that begins right here on this day when I graduated from the University of North Florida with my education degree, and I was ready to change the world, and I had everything figured out, just like most of you, right? Yep. And then I walked in front of these 19 beautiful students, and I quickly realized that everything I thought I knew was wrong. And instead of me changing their world, they changed my world. And I found myself pondering a really scary question. I started thinking a lot about this, which is really scary for a dude who spent 4 years and a lot of money studying to be a teacher, but I wondered, what is teaching, right? So in an exercise in futility, I went to Google, and I did a Google image search of the word teacher, and here's the results. It's a bunch of mostly Caucasian women at the board, like this, like the best case scenario looking over there. And that wasn't working for those 19 students. That wasn't doing it. Google even defines teaching as this: ideas or principles taught by an authority. What? No, not okay, right? Like, those beautiful children weren't learning from me up here talking to them as I am to you guys right now. But luckily, we have some sort of conflicting views here, right? Galileo said this: we can not teach people anything, we can only help them discover it within themselves, right? We can only help provide opportunities for students to make sense of their learning. That's our job, right? So I'm making sense of all this in my classroom, and someone comes in my first year and hands me this curriculum. The Investigations in Number, Data, and Space curriculum, first edition, way back, 1998. I'm teaching from this book, and this book taught me everything I know about mathematics education now. It helped me understand how to make sense of the world and teach a lot more like this, right? Like where I'm sitting with kids and talking to them and finding out what they know, or sitting with a small group of students with some base 10 blocks. And when I was at the board, there was a kid there with me, sharing his or her thinking, right? Like, that's the vision that I wanted to have, and that brings me here, to the math ahead, and where I want to go. What do I want to do with the remainder of my career? And I challenge myself to think about one thing I want to do, and that thing is this: I want to be a better listener. I want to learn how to listen to my students. And we have a good friend in the room named Max Ray, who did a wonderful Ignite talk a few years ago called 2 is greater than 4. And he talked about listening for versus listening to. And as a quick sort of review of that, Max, don't throw anything if you get it wrong. Listening for an answer sounds a lot like, what is 2 times 5? And you all go, say it louder. Yeah, and then I ask the next question, right? Because I listened for the answer, as opposed to listening to my students. And if I go, what's 5 times 2? You all go, 10. And my response now is, how did you know that? Where did you get that? How did you arrive at that answer, right? I heard the answer, but that's irrelevant, right? I want to know how you were thinking about it. So I'm challenging myself to try and answer this question. Thinking about Dan's talk last night, this is my question. How can I be a better listener? What can I do to challenge myself to be a better listener, to listen to instead of listening for? So I have 4 ideas I'm going to try. The first is this: I'm going to try to get away from the board. Right? When I'm at the board, I'm sending a message to you that I'm in charge and I'm giving you the answers, and that limits a two-way conversation. I want to spend more time down there with my students and less time up here. Next up, I want to ask questions that I don't know the answer to. This is a really important one, right? Like, how did you get that? What do you notice? What do you wonder? How did you get that answer? The reason this is so powerful to me is I can't listen for an answer if I don't know the answer. It forces me to listen to them. I want to provide pause, that uncomfortable moment, right? But what's so powerful about this is providing pause allows students to develop a response to an answer, and this is an equity issue. I get more voices in the classroom when I provide pause because they have time to make sense of their thinking. Finally, I want to try and allow for more student talk. I want to encourage conversation between me and the student and between students. And I want to evaluate their thinking. I don't want to provide a response to that. I just want to listen. So I've come to this conclusion. If I want to do this sort of math ahead of me, which is sort of helping kids make sense of their learning and make sense of the world, I want to do one thing, and that's be a better listener. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach, for helping us realize the ways in which our students can challenge us to be the better teacher, and if we can just listen to them and attend.